千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. So let me share the story with you called The Weeds. Once upon a time, in ancient China, there was a sage. He had 3 disciples. So they all worked together, studied together at a remote temple. Once every few months, they would travel from the temple into the nearest town to purchase supplies. So one day, on one of these trips into town, they passed by a field that was overgrown with weeds. Now, the sage looked at this and thought that this is an opportunity to discuss the Tao, because the Tao, after all, is in everything. So the sage turned to his disciples. He said, "This field can be compared to the mind. What we plant in the mind are ideas and negative thoughts that's been planted in the mind are like the weeds that you see here. So tell me, what do you think is the best way to get rid of the weeds, to clear the field?" So the first disciple was quick to the answer, beating the others to the punch. He said, "Well, master, we just pull up the weeds with our hands. That's easy, right? What can be easier than that?" And the second disciple disagreed with the first disciple. He spoke up and said, "Well, no, that's not effective. I mean, this field is pretty big. And so look at how many weeds there are. You can only do so much of that pulling with your bare hands before you get tired. You gotta use tools, like maybe a shovel. You can do more in less time. So you can save yourself a lot of effort by doing it with intelligence, with the right tools." Then I mentioned that there were 3 disciples. So there's a third disciple. He was the slowest to answer, but then he said, "No, I disagree with both of you, because even that is not effective enough. Look at how big this field is. Even with a shovel, it's still going to take a long time, hours to clear this field. It's still going to be exhausting. Whether you do it by hand or by a shovel, same thing. I would say the best way is fire. What you do is that you set up a perimeter around the field, and then you start a fire to burn the whole thing. It'll take time to prepare such a perimeter to make sure that it is safe and will contain the fire. But once you've done that and you get the fire going, burning the weeds, you just stand back and watch. You don't have to, it's so powerful, you don't have to do the work yourself. The fire is going to do the work for you. So that's got to be the best way. So with these 3 very different answers, the sage approved. The sage said, "Well, all of you gave answers that are quite different, all equally interesting. Now tell me, how does your answer correspond with the Tao? After all, we studied the Tao. Everything that we talk about, we want to connect it back to the Tao to see if we can uncover some sort of universal principle." Again, the first disciple was the quickest. He said, "I would say my method, pulling up the weeds with bare hands, is the Tao, because it's like confronting each negative thought in the mind directly, getting a hold of it and having the satisfaction of yanking it out, uprooting it from the mind or the field. This is the Tao in the most basic, most fundamental level. So he was happy with that analysis. The second disciple thought about this and then again disagreed just like he did before. He said, well, I mentioned that the field has too many weeds to clear by hand. It's the same with the mind. If you think about the mind, there are so many negative thoughts that if you want to eliminate one by one, that's going to take quite a while. You need tools. With the field, I said shovel. With mind cultivation, it's the tools of Tao cultivation, like meditation, mantras, reading sutras, memorizing sutras. Think about it. These spiritual tools are standard for a reason. They're standard for us. They're also standard for other cultivators. So isn't it obvious? My idea using the right tools is much closer to the Tao. Let me pause here and ask you guys, what do you think? Think about, as you follow the story, think about it like the disciples and the sage. What do you think the third disciple would say? As you would probably expect, he disagreed with the other two. He said, no, my method, the fire, it is the most powerful and therefore the most similar to the Tao. The Tao is all powerful. My method using fire is like establishing communion with the gods and the Buddhas. Burning the field with fire is like using the sacred power of the divine. You sweep the mind completely clean of negative thoughts. The power of that makes it the closest to the Tao. So he sat back and he too thought he had the best answer. So all of them thought they had the best answer. And you may have a different opinion. You may root for a different disciple. But here is what the sage said. He again approved of their answers. He said, these are all quite valid. Now, we're going to continue on our way. So he actually decided to not reveal what he thought. He said, we're going to continue on our way. But I want all of you to remember this discussion that we just had. Think about your solution some more. We'll come back to this. So then months passed, and soon it was time to go on the supply run again. So they took the same path as before. So again, they passed by the same field, just like before. This time, though, things looked different. They saw whoever owned that field had turned it into rice paddies. Seeing this, the sage turned to the disciples and he said, this is the reason why I did not name one of your answers as the right one. Because none of you actually touched the level of the Tao. So the disciples were confused and said, well, Master, what was wrong with our solutions? They seem perfectly reasonable. The sage pointed out, well, they were reasonable, but they were all temporary measures. What you described were all correct, and yet they were temporary, not lasting. The Tao is that which lasts. The material world is that which is transient. So in your answers, after you're done with any of the methods that you named, by hand, by tools, by fire, after a while, you know the weeds will grow back. The only way to ensure that won't happen is to replace the weeds with something else, like what you see right in front of you, the rice crop. So even then, you have to maintain it, but the right crop in the field will help prevent the weeds from coming back. So in a similar way, it's not enough just to eliminate negative thoughts from the mind. You also, at the same time, have to plant the seeds of positive thoughts. That's how you make it last. That's how you make sure the weeds do not return. So I can see that many of you are definitely thinking along the same lines as the sage. That's great. That's the Tao. Once it's explained, even if it did not occur to you before, I think you would agree with me that it seems simple and obvious. And that's how a Tao story should be. So then let's review. What did we talk about? First of all, the common practice in the Tao that the disciples have referred to. There's introspection. What this means is that you think back on the past to review your thoughts, your words, your actions. You make sure that what you have done, what you have said are all in accordance with the Tao. That's one of the practices common in Tao cultivation. Another one, also very common, reading. That's to absorb the collective wisdom from books and sutras. So this is also something that's widespread, and this is something that can bring people from not knowing a whole lot about the Tao to even participating in a meeting like this. Then there's, of course, meditation. In meditation here in the bullet, you see passive and active forms. I want to point out that meditation includes not just sitting meditation, which is the passive form where you keep still and you eliminate, you let go of all thoughts, all grasping attachments to enter into the trance-like state of the meditative mind. But there are also active forms. Those of you who have taken up Tai Chi or Qi Gong, Tai Chi is Tai Chi Quan. Qi Gong, these are movements, these are motions. But the idea is that these can be meditative movements. You can have your body in motion while your mind remains tranquil in a meditative state. There's also contemplation, and this is when we talk about communion with divine avatars or virtues at the lower level, at the beginning level of cultivation. People think of it as prayers. I pray to a particular deity. I pray for strength, for wisdom, for virtue to help me cultivate. I use the term communion because it's closer to the essence when you get to a higher level, that you are communing with the avatar or the representation of a particular virtue that you wish to manifest in your life. So these are all common practices in the Tao. So the well-established Tao, in our analysis, what the sage pointed out is that you can do the above, but they do not last. You also have to do more. The lasting Tao is to plant the seeds of goodness, So not just reviewing your negative actions and words, but also practice compassionate actions, speak compassionate words, and so on. You have to make that part of your cultivational effort to let the positive take root and displace the negative. Now, over time, the good news is that the effect lasts and it's completely natural. So I want to offer you this story as a way to illustrate what it means to have a deeply rooted Tao practice. It's a Tao practice that requires maintenance. It's Tao practice that requires the positive side of life that you want to manifest more and more, and then using that to help you continue on and help you handle incoming negativity, adversity, challenges, difficulties, and so on. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.